All right, this is a quick review over the test. Second test of this class will be over if statements, conditional statements. So the first portion of the test would be terms. Conditional control structure, a statement that branches program flow depending on a condition. Also called decision structure. An example would be an if statement or switch statement. Basically, it allows you to change the direction of your program, run one piece of code over another if certain things happen. Relational operator are the things that go within those if statements. An if statement is a Boolean statement. Basically, it's going to ask a question, and that answer that it's going to get back is either going to be true or false. Equal equal basically is asking, is one side equal to the other? Are they the same? If it is, then it's true. If it's not, then it's false. Of course, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. These can get people into trouble if you're not careful with which one you use. If you use a less than, let's say less than 0. If this is less than 0, that means it's not going to be 0. It's got to be less than 0. If you say less than or equal to 0, then it will be 0 and anything below it. Same with greater than. If I say greater than 0, 0 will not be true. It has to be bigger than 0. Any number as long as it's bigger than 0. Greater than or equal to means it can also be 0. Now, this last one is not equal to. Basically, it says if this does not equal that, if they are not the same, then this is a true statement. There are several ways basically to write the exact same statement. Uh, you know, if this variable equals 5, if the only other option for this is to be 0, for example, well, if this does not equal 0, the only option would be 5, then that'd be basically saying the same thing. Uh, so some statements you can write basically multiple ways and it still works the same. Logical and, this is for compound statements. If I say this and that, for example, right here. If I say player equals 0 and computer equals 1, if these two are true, then, that statement's true. It's going to run. The next statement would be the or. That means if this is not true, then I check the next set of statements. Ands basically combine these two into one statement. Both sides of these have to be true. An or, on the other hand, if this side is true, then this statement runs. If it's not, then it checks the next set of statements. If that's true, this runs. If not, it checks the next statement. If that's true, it runs. If none of them are true, then it will go to this else, in other words. Now, logical not, well, that's just the exclamation point. If I say exclamation point true, that means not true or false, which I could also say if it equals false. I could just put exclamation point true or exclamation point whatever the Boolean name is, and that would be the same as saying not true. Again, there's sometimes a couple of different ways to write the same statement. We've already gone over logical or. Nested would be when an if is inside another if. In this case, I have this first if, and that if right here, or this set of ifs, is inside that one. You see how it's tabbed over. Now, the worst thing you can do is have your code look something like this. Now, code will run all on one line if you want it to, but this makes it incredibly difficult to read. Every time you hit a brace, you tab over by 5. NetBeans or Eclipse usually automatically do that for you. NetBeans has a nice little Alt-Shift-F to automatically line those braces up. And the reason I mark all these braces is because that is generally, especially when you're new, and even when you're not new, one of the places where you tend to have the most problems. So I mark each one of these knowing that's supposed to end this. If we want to be a little more specific, this ends this else here if choice equals 1. This ends this else here if choice or if player is less than 2. I could write that whole thing out if I want it to be a little more specific. Now the rest of the test, after you get past the terms, and there might be a little questionnaire about these as well, will be reading code. So in other words, if I gave you some code with some simple if statements, let's say I just had this one statement here, if player equals computer. And up here I said player is 5, computer is 3. Would that run? Well, 3 is not equal to 5, so this if statement wouldn't run. If they were both 5, then it would print off its tie. So basically know how to read if statements, know how to read switch case, and then be able to write what those answers are going to be. Now you don't have to explain every little detail. This line is doing this line is doing that. For my test, you just simply have to write out what is the end result if this whole set of code runs based on what I tell you, what will appear on my screen at the end. If you know that, then I know you can read the code and you know what basically each line's doing. Or you guess really well, maybe, but most likely you know what you're doing. So I don't need an explanation of every single line. And the place where people tend to go wrong here is they'll write out, this line checks to see if a variable is less than or equal to 2, and this variable is also greater than or equal to 0. This checks to see if these are equal. This prints out if it's a tie. Well, specifically, what will the program do given the values that I've said? I know what all this is doing, and explaining it's nice and all that, but specifically, if you look at this code, what is the result? Part of programming is knowing how to read code. And if you write it well enough, it's easier to read. That's why if you name variables properly, you know what they are. It makes it easier to understand when you're reading code. If you name it int1, int2, int3, int4, and so on, number1, number2, number3, number4, that makes things a lot more difficult when you have a larger program. Now that'll be the next part of the test, the writing of the code. The last part will be writing a program. You'll get a short little list of things I want you to make. Typically, make a program that does this. And then you simply just make that program. You can look at your old code, you can copy and paste and do whatever you need to do for that. But make that program work, attach it, submit the whole test, and everything gets great. Now, of course, if there's any other questions or anything specific, you can ask me either through messages, office, class, wherever, however, email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And that is it.